reminiscent of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. The question is, why is this happening? And what would it take to stem the tide of these developments? We'll be having a conversation on that as we're joined by Colonel Festus Abuaje, who joins us for this all-important.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
Right. Any surprises, what you've seen so far in the last 18 months? 3 coups, and I listened to you speaking on Newsfile together with Professor Kwesi Enning, who also says that we're likely to have 2 further coups by May.
By 2012, the Mali was falling to jihadists. Within 3 years, 2015, from Libya caught Mali, now affected Burkina Faso. And the situation in Burkina Faso is not getting any better. Indeed, since 2019, it's taken a turn, are all gone to the jihadists. 2,000 deaths, for instance, 1.4 million population displaced as being part of the jihadist onslaught. So if you look at the trend from Libya to Mali to Burkina Faso, then theoretically you could say borders. And terrorism is echoing of our northern borders. There is a lot that we need to be concerned about. And that is my...
How much of a concern is it? And yes, we shall get into the dynamics and find out what exactly is that ingredient that seems to be running across concern to us now that the country bordering us to the north, Burkina Faso, has also fallen.
Well, Burkina Faso hasn't fallen.
Situation.
To answer that question, we need to revisit the dynamics. You see, Burkina Faso is at war, on a war footing, and you prioritize your war effort. So there are many things that you would ordinarily do in the normal onslaught. And one of them, obviously, is the military capacity. Assuming that it's hitting the territories that have been taken by the jihadists. Now that liberation effort will entail defeating the terrorists at Inata in November of last year, very remote, close to the Malian border. And they ran out of combat ammunition, and they sent signals upon signals upon signals, and Ouagadougou does not respond. Until on 14th November, that outpost is full of civilians. Now, this is the reason why, or one of the reasons why, the coup happened. And the coup makers said that when he was already in detention, that all the military chiefs must be sacked. Now, why must the military chiefs be sacked? The coup makers are saying that there has been corruption to the soldiers. The procurement of helicopters for military purposes end up being civilian, grade helicopters, And he rather targets a number of officers and what they call the boys, the soldiers, who are very angry that their colleagues had been killed. Some of the narratives that we had in the 80s, where soldiers were rather, orchestrating the violence. If that happens in Burkina Faso, there's a
center of that exact, call for help, so to speak, to President Kabore is the same person who led his ousting.
This gentleman is very well educated. In these days, many military officers are highly educated. He's written a book on West African armies and the jihadism. Now, he's for the coup, and he suggests to him that the strategy to defeat the jihadists probably could be held if it is brought into the equation. The president disagreed. So there are tensions in the civil-military relations before the coup. It would be very wrong to say that only military must decide strategy. There must be that accommodation. The lack of that accommodation, the refusal of the president to listen to the military, who think that if they could bring in these mercenaries, It's not the first time they're going to be in Africa. As we speak, they're in about 20 African countries, either for commercial purposes in mining, even have the Wagner Group, So the point I was making last week is that there is something, and I cited a few examples of some of these things in Ghana.
Right.
In fact, until. Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Wrap with that comment.
At the point I was making, I don't have any doubts about that. But the rubber will hit the road. And when the rubber hits the road, assuming, that is when we'll be able to test our preparedness.
Right.
So like Burkina Faso, everything was fine until the jihadists came and they realized that no, their military capacity and capabilities were not sufficient.
These countries that are succumbing to coups, and after the coups, reminiscent of the Rawlings era in the 80s, people actually jubilate. They hit the streets bearing placards, bearing photos, images of the coup makers, and they are jubilating. And these are democracies.
Yeah.
Now, what is that contagion coup? But what are the factors sweeping across the sub-region that make these democracies think, oh, we are good to go, and yet they fall? What are the factors?
One of them, I think, was pointed out last week by either Professor Kwesianin or Professor PHA, that there seems to be a loss of confidence and trust in African democracy. The masses don't trust is actually addressing their socioeconomic needs. So that is a broad fundamental. I've mentioned civil military relations. I've also mentioned corruption. When the dialogue between the military on the other hand and the political class on the other hand is not good enough, you're going to have issues. In the specific context of the state to be liberated so that it can restore its sovereignty and territorial integrity, they think that that objective must be given all the support. Now, if they think, and they know best, better than we do, and let me digress and say that this is one reason why I say that it is very, very wrong for anybody who is not understand the dynamics. So the people want the country to be liberated, but they don't see sufficient effort on the part of the government. Civilians are dying, 2,000. There's this Burkina Faso refugees. You say, that displacement will have implications, for instance, on the cross-border trade, the informal type, as well as the goods that are being ferried from Temahabo and elsewhere up north into Burkina Faso. It affects Mali, and it will affect Niger. The onions that we've been eating here from Niger probably may no longer be coming. So all of us need to be concerned, you say, but the fundamentals, inequality. They see a few people driving V8s, running everybody off the road, blowing dust on them, when they are struggling to make ends meet. We put in place very simple policies of digitizing or and that loss of livelihood has implications for them. You see, those little things are what I call the details.
Right.
Not what the politicians are telling us. You see, a lot of people who are privately employed, look, you see, so even though we claim, our governments claim that they are creating jobs, the jobs that are being created are not large enough. The youth is bulging. From the last statistics, the census, I believe, the youth bulge from 15, 19 years to 45% of them who are passed well enter university. The remaining 55% don't know where they are going to go.
Right.
And it's not very easy to say that they must set themselves up, startups and so on that people are talking about. And reining this frivolous spending and the lavish lifestyles. That's what the people are complaining about.
Okay.
When their president is riding or flying in a jet, when they are hungry, they can't get jobs. That is what they are talking about.
Okay. So
when politicians that are very poor, you're going to have that socio-economic inequality, whether vertically or horizontally. you're going to have problems.
Okay. Colonel, just to, and I'll quickly sneak in my very final question to you, which is not what I'm going to ask you now. We'll have to do on the the coup in Burkina Faso. He says it's a direct violation of our democratic tenets. And then he goes on to say the rest of the world is looking up to us, that is ECOWAS, to be firm on this matter. The sanctions that have been imposed on Burkina Faso, does that show our firmness? We've seen it in Guinea, we've seen it in Mali. It's not amounted to much. Will it do much in Burkina Faso?
No, not at all. You see, this is hypocrisy. The impression and the understanding that I'm getting is that the political class, the civilian Africa, are trying to suggest to us that any civilian rule must be accepted, no questions asked. You see, and that is a wrong premise. The masses cannot accept rule. There is economic mismanagement, there is autism, there is all these things that we've been talking about. That's one. Secondly, I trace the onset of the jihadism. What has ECOWAS and the AU been doing? Yes, AU intervened with what we call the AFISMA, African-led International Stabilization Mission, I think 2013, thereabout in Mali. But since then, what have we done? We've left the 5 countries from Mauritania to Niger to now form what we call the G5 Sahel and deal with the threat to their state sovereignty. The rest of us on the Atlantic coast are only, establishing collaborative arrangements in the areas of intelligence with these countries. That is not enough. We should have done more. Okay. At least we have the African standby force. We have the ECOWAS standby force. So as we did in Gambia 2016-17, even if we're not going to be directly involved in the fight against terrorism, we could have deployed an ECOWAS standby force to try and stabilize some parts of these countries so that we can release their forces now to go and do the fighting. Do you get the idea?
I get the idea, so and all of these were not done.
The primary argument we are making is that, when civilians are misruling, mismanaging, ECOWAS and the African Union don't talk about anything. When to ask when Cote d'Ivoire, the president changed the constitution and went for a third term. 2015, Togo, same thing happened. Guinea, just last year, the president has run out of his term. Instead of stepping down, he now re-engineers the constitution, gags the opposition, throws them into jail, releases his military to kill innocent protesters so that he can go for a longer term. Did we hear ECOWAS in any form or manner condemning some of these military...
And those are questions we will definitely have to ask.
ECOWAS, yes.
Colonel, I just want you...
So the argument is that if ECOWAS does not ensure strict adherence to the principles that the president referred to, free, fair, transparent elections, for instance, respect for human rights. Look, Ayawaso Wogon should not have happened, and all those that preceded. So when we kill, as a state, we kill innocent people and don't even take care of them, what kind of democracy are we talking about? We violate human rights, and we just go home and say that we are democratic, and that's the end of it. In Parliament, and let me emphasize that.
Colonel, we're going to have to wrap it here, unfortunately, owing to the passage of time. But we're very grateful for your time that you joined us this morning. Colonel Festus Aboagye is sharing his thoughts there on the situation in Burkina Faso. Something big is coming, and the way you listen to Multimedia's radio stations is about to change. Get ready for it. If you're using a smartphone running on Android, just activate your Google Assistant now and get ready to ask Multimedia for a whole new experience. To do this, look for the Google app on your phone. It's the multicolored letter G. Open it and press your display photo or initials on the top right. Go to settings, find Hey Google and voice match and open it. Make sure Hey Google is enabled by tapping on the switch until it turns blue. You may have to record your voice so your Google Assistant can identify you anytime you speak. Now, you're ready to ask Multimedia. Yeah. Okay. So that is it. Get ready and make the most of your Android device. Now, before I say goodbye to you, I can't run without doing this. Happy birthday to Professor Eric Dankwa of the West African Center for Crop Improvement, WAXI, University of Ghana. Thanks for being an asset. It's from Aram Bashan and from Richard Dodu to his lovely wife, Rosemary Dodu. Happy birthday to you. My name is Benjamin Akakbo. This has been the AM Show. Do join us again, same time tomorrow. Have a good day.